Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's the former president of the Miami Marlins and the host of Nothing Personal on the CBS Sports Podcast Network. Please welcome David Samson to the program. David, it's great to have you on. How are you?
I am doing great. I always love this show. Thanks for having me.
David, do you trust Pacoda?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because tell me what it does for you. I'm just curious. Like when you go through it, I'm just curious. Like, do you say, "Oh, I get it now. Oh, that's going to happen." What's the theory that you have so I can learn?
How did you evaluate these projections when you were in the front office?
We generally kept them in the bathroom.
Really?
And yes, that's pretty much what we did. We did our own. So here's how it works. We'd get together with the baseball people and we would tell them what the payroll was going to be. And then we go through what our roster was. And then we would project what this team was. And then we would say, is there anything out there that can positively impact our win total in our mind without going over the budget? And then we'd go to the owner and say, here's the moves that we're thinking of. But there's another move that we could make that we think would be beneficial to us this season, but it's going to be an over budget move. And that would then be the owner's choice. The thing with these projections, and the reason I did a whole segment on it on Nothing Personal, is that they do a simulation of a season without taking into account travel, without taking into account injury, without taking into account lack of performance or overperformance, or what happens when a train gets started when a team just somehow is having that kind of year, or a player's having that kind of year. It doesn't do that. Now, what they'll argue is, of course it does, because we do 10 million simulations. And what I answer is, and what the baseball people think in every organization, we don't care about 10 million simulations. We care about what's real. It's the equivalent we always would talk about of people who run a fantasy baseball team. They win their fantasy league and they put that on the resume and try to get a job in the front office saying, hey, I can be the GM. That's the equivalent.
Have these projections, David, Pacoda, and the rise of sabermetrics ruined the game at all to you?
No, because I don't pay attention as an 18-year executive, right? So it doesn't. I think it makes it a little more robotic. I think that players do read it. One thing we fought every spring training is that players all read these projections. They look at the standings and say, I guess we're not going to be good this year. So we would always say to our players, ignore all that. Ignore when we're projected to be good. Ignore when we're projected to be bad, because we're the 25 guys. Now it's 26. And we're the ones who will decide this year through effort and through detail and through organization and organizational behavior. We will determine how good we are. It's up to you. And so we would have to do some mental conditioning before many of the seasons.
David Samson here on Sports Talk Chicago. David, what's your take on the NL Central for this season?
I think that Arenado going to the Cardinals is really going to be a difference maker. I think, obviously, I'm sorry to say this because I know we're in Chicago right now. I think the Cubs have a problem, and they knew they were having a problem, and that's why Theo left. He didn't want to be a part of any sort of rebuild. He's going to say it's just because he wanted Jed to take over. It was time, or he wanted a break to spend time with his family. No, he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild. And the fact of the matter is that the Cubs had a great run. They got a World Series, and now their window with that group of players is closing, and they recognize it, and they're going to sort of figure out what the next wave will be. And I think the Brewers will need Yelly to come back the way he likely will, but I don't think they have the pitching. If I were the Brewers, I would have traded Josh Hader for sure, because there's such a premium for bullpen arms. But I think that the Cardinals have the definite advantage.
Are the Cubs right in fully rebuilding right now, or at least recognizing it's time to move on?
Yes, 100%. They got this group of players together. They only won one World Series, and I say only with a smirk, because that's the dream come true. They changed generations of people. People can literally die in peace because the Cubs won a World Series. It is a huge success what the Cubs did over these past number of years, but you can't keep Rizzo and pay him as though he's the best first baseman in the game, because he's not. You can't keep Baez and pay him as though he's the best shortstop in the game, because he's not. You can't keep Contreras. You can't keep all these guys. Lester is definitely done. which is why they let him go smartly. They got a World Series out of him, a hugely successful deal. I think that they're aware. Chris Bryant, that Boris believes he's the best third baseman in the game, but he's not. And so the Cubs are smart not to pay these guys because they're really sort of on the back end now.
What do you say to those who tell you what you're saying sounds crazy? A lot of people here in Chicago are concerned about people leaving and this team breaking up. What do you say to them?
I say, please remember the 2016 World Series. Please say thank you to the Ricketts family. Please say thank you to Joe Madden and realize that you were a part of something historic, and then get excited that hopefully Jed Hoyer, without Theo there, has the ability to work with the Ricketts family well enough to get another window open quickly.
Do you believe the claim right now that the Cubs are $1 billion in debt? And could that have something to do with all these moves, do you think?
What had to do is that the Cubs get a tremendous amount of revenue by having home games. Are you aware of what's going on in Wrigleyville? It's crickets. It's a ghost town, right? I know of many businesses that have just closed down. And the Ricketts family sort of doubled down on their investments both at Wrigley. Think about what they did to improve Wrigley. And you invest hoping for a return on your investment, planning for a return on your investment. And the only way to get that return is to have tuchuses in the seats. And there's a full year that they had zero, and who knows what's going to be with 21. It's not like the Marlins, guys. It's not like when there's 10% capacity, that's a sellout. For the Cubs, you need 100% capacity, and that's when you run your numbers, what you assume you will get, and when you don't, you've got to adjust, and that's what the Cubs did.
What about the White Sox? Will they be a contender this year, do you think?
Yeah, I like their team. I do. What worries me a little bit is some regression that could happen with their young guys. I think to assume that Abreu is going to have the type of season this year that he had last year is not reasonable and should not be expected. I think that health will be a big factor, hoping that Grandal is not finished and hoping that Robert can not sort of have that sophomore slump. And they're just a good team. So it's going to be a very interesting division. I think that most people will probably pick them to win the division. Please invite me back, but I have not done my predictions on Nothing Personal. But I think the Twins are a better team because there's so many questions as to what will happen to the White Sox over a full 162. But I'm very happy for Jerry and for what he's doing. And you guys in Chicago, you're the city that I'm the most jealous of as a New Yorker. You crushed my childhood along with Michael Jordan. And, Jerry Reinsdorf can never be appreciated enough for stewarding what he's done. 6 NBA titles, a World Series title in 2005. I mean, my God, and he's trying again.
Have you told him that before? Have you gone up to him and said that?
Yes, we actually have conversations about it often because he knew me back when I was a Knick fan. He knew me as the little kid who was screaming and heckling at Knick games, sitting 2 rows behind him. And the first time I ever walked into an owner's meeting, he recognized me immediately, and we had a funny sort of moment together. But he became like a mentor, and all he wants to do is win. Even though he has said some things, and we had that squabble sort of publicly where he had taught me some things about running a baseball team. But the reality is that he cares about Chicago, the community, Chicago, the city, Illinois, the state, in a way that you just would want an owner of your professional sports team. And he handled everything, not perfectly. You can't own a team for 30 years and do everything perfectly. I did it only for 18 years as a team president, and I ran out of fingers and toes counting the mistakes I made. And, in this day of social media where everything's public and Googleable, I'm reminded of it every day. And so that can't be the prism through which his ownership is judged, because that simply is not fair.
How do you feel about that you're judged constantly because of social media and people always point out stuff about that, your past mistakes?
I say to people when I meet them, can you imagine going to your job every day and having everyone there tell you that they can do your job better than you can? Right? Think about that concept. It's very bizarre. And there's very few jobs where you are judged with a win or a loss 162 out of 365 days. and it's twice as many games as basketball. And there's recency bias that exists with fans. When you're on an 8-game winning streak, you're a genius. When you've lost 6 in a row, you deserve to be fired. And when you run a team, you have to ignore the emotionality of it. And by the way, that had an impact on my personal life, on my professional life, because I became so robotic and so unemotional, because it really was just a protective mechanism that I did to stay sane. By the way, do I owe you money for this therapy session?
No, you don't. No, this is on the house, David, of course. David Samson here on Sports Talk Chicago. David, what's your number one concern for the White Sox right now?
It's the same for every team. And no matter what anyone tells you, this is the concern of every front office. And it starts with a P and ends with a G. Pitching. Always pitch. That is what every GM and president worries about more than anything else. More than offensive production, more than scoring runs, you worry about your pitching staff.
Do you think Michael Kopech will come back strong?
You know, history says no, but that's the type of thing, as an example, that the White Sox need and all these other teams need. And what we would do in our front office is we would point out players, and we talk to these players during the offseason and during spring, explain to them the importance of them performing and what their role will be. He is a critical performer for the White Sox, but there's no reason to feel certain about it, which is why you play the games and not the simulations.
Should they be in the championship conversation, or is that too early to say?
They are definitely in the conversation. This is the exact time you say they're in the conversation. It's around July when you really start bearing down on who's in the conversation. But the preseason conversation, absolutely.
Who else do you think is in there too?
So let's take 10 teams. Let's say the Dodgers, the Padres, the Cardinals, the Braves, the Nationals. Let's say the Yankees. Let's say the White Sox, and I think we're missing the AL West?
Yes.
Do I have to say the Angels? I guess I have to, right? If we're going to say Mike Trout's the face of baseball and they sign Anthony Rendon, except I can't. The Angels have no pitching. How can they, year after year, trot out this team with the best player in baseball who's turning 30 this year, and he hasn't won a playoff game? Oy vey.
David Samson, still here on Sports Talk Chicago. David, 2 more questions before we finish up. First off, your favorite ballpark giveaway day was what?
Oh, God. All right, I'm going to say it, because if you want to Google a funny story, we gave away in Miami, and I'll tell you the story of the Vuvuzela.
Okay.
Vuvuzela is a thing that makes a noise that would make your head fall off, and it's a great sort of atmospheric noise in the Dominican, in Venezuela, in Japan, in Asia, and we thought this is perfect. Let's give these away in Miami. Let's sort of say that we're trying to, draw more people. We give them out. And there were so few fans in the stands. They were making so much noise with the vuvuzelas that there was this buzz like we were being attacked by a swarm of bees the entire game, because there wasn't crowd noise. It was just this crazy vuvuzela noise. And the players were despondent. The owner was despondent. The media made fun of us. And I'm the one who approved it because I thought that it was worth a shot. And thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. That really made my morning.
And David, before we finish up today, last question. Is it true that you caused a rain delay for the Marlins?
Oh, come on. By the way, it's a way better story than that. It was opening day.
Okay.
We have a roof. The roof is open, and everything's going great. And the way I would do weather back in those days is on my phone with a weather app. And I'd be in touch with the people around the roof. I'd be in touch with the head of the ballpark operations, and we'd look for cells, they're called, which are sort of thunderstorms that pop up. And I said, we're in the clear. We're fine. I got called from someone in operations who said, we may have a problem with weather. I said, no, it's going the other way because my app is saying that it's blowing to the east. We're totally fine. All of a sudden it starts pouring, and we don't know where the tarp is because there's supposed to be no tarp. Basically, I wanted to cut it off out of the budget because why would we ever need it? I had to go tell the owner that there was a rain delay coming on opening day, and it became national news. I had to do a press conference after the game explaining why we had a rain delay, and it was one of my top 30 embarrassing moments over 8.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure. And best wishes to you with the podcast and also spring training coming up and the season coming up as well. Thank you so much.
I look forward to the next time. Have a great day.